Go to our 5 takeaways where we'll pick up 5 things where we can take away from the game. And first up, we're going to talk about the masterful Madison.
Yeah, and what a performance this was from James Madison. He was just absolutely everywhere. I mean, the stats speak themselves, and I'll go through them, but he was just absolutely imperious on the day, and there's a big reason why everyone's given him their man of the match. But 7 of 11 dribbles completed, which was such an important stat when it came to breaking Brentford's one-on-one man marking pressing, which was phenomenal, the way he was able to rig out those situations. 3 key passes, 2 shots on target, 3 tackles, 1 interception, 14 out of 23 ground duels won, 3 accurate through balls, 1 goal and an assist on the day. So capped it off with goal contributions, but he was so much more than the goal contributions yesterday, because he was just absolutely fantastic all over the park. And I think probably his best display in a Spurs shirt, and just showed how effective and what a wonderful player he can be when he's in this kind of form.
Yeah, and a lot of fans have been getting worried about James Madison and his performance level. He said after the game that he feels like, from a personal point of view, that he's actually been performing pretty well this season. And I tend to agree with that. I feel like he has been putting in good performance this season, definitely better than the last 6 months of last season, that's for sure, since getting back from his injury. But this one topped the lot by some way. He was everywhere. They didn't know how to deal with him. He was wriggling out of tight spaces. I mean, at some points he had 2 or 3 men around him, and they couldn't even get close to the ball. So that's a big credit for James Madison. Got that goal, which he thoroughly deserved. His first goal since March of this calendar year, so it's been a long time. He said after the game that he had to dust off the old darts celebration, but at least he got it in there. And the only person that was a bit upset with him after the game was his mum, because his mum lost a point in fantasy for having him in the team after taking his shirt off for the celebration. But no, I think James Madison was brilliant yesterday, and it was great to see him get back to those levels. And it's all about consistency now. If he can perform like that on a consistent basis, he's going to be absolutely a joy to behold, watching him every week. So big up to James Madison. Next up, number 2 is Adaptable Spurs.
Yeah, and Spurs did change things up yesterday, which was very, very interesting, I felt, in terms of how they approached this game compared to especially how they've played the first 3 games of the season. Spurs had 48% possession against Brentford, which is only the 3rd time under Ange in the Premier League that we've had less possession than the opposition. The only other 2 times were Chelsea at home when we're down to 9 men, and Man City away we drew 3-3. Yet despite having less possession, we had more touches in the box than we have had in the last 3 games so far this season, and more touch in the box than any other team in the Premier League so far this season. We also performed 14 interceptions in this game, which is more close to double the amount of interceptions we've had in any other game so far this season. So I think that's an indication of Tottenham doing things in a different way in this kind of game, looking for more transitional threats, looking for more space in behind, and actually actively manipulating the tactics so that we can force more transitions rather than just hitting on counter-attacks. We're trying to kind of enforce the transitions ourselves, which are a very interesting kind of tactic, I felt. And it worked a treat, because I thought Brennan Johnson and Son looked a lot more effective. They had a lot more space to play with, and it led to us winning the game, I felt.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was great to see, because there was a lot of heat coming Ange Postecoglou's way in terms of his inability to change things. He's stuck in the rigid system, or not rigid system, but he was stuck in his ways of always inverting the fullbacks. He's not going to have it any other way, always trying to dominate the possession, which obviously is not a bad thing, but it shows that he's got different variations in his ways he can set up his teams, and it definitely stood us in good stead yesterday. So it shows that he's got different kind of arrows to his bow. So great stuff from Ange Postecoglou yesterday. Number 3, we are going to look at Dominant Udogie.
Yeah, and he was phenomenal yesterday, and he really looks like he's starting to get fully match fit now, because he was so dominant. He was literally covering so much ground and involved in so many duels, and coming out on top of them was fantastic. He did 6 tackles, 4 interceptions. That's 10 defensive contributions. 8 out of 12 duels won as well, so really dominant in his ground duels on his side. 1 key pass, so he was able to create a chance as well down that side, and I think it was 1 out of 2 dribbles completed, but he was just phenomenal on the day, really dominant down the left-hand side, and I think those defensive numbers show that he's really starting to get back to that fully fit Destiny Udogie, who was completely dominant last season down that left-hand side, and he played 90 minutes as well to a good level. So that's really, really positive for Destiny Udogie, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't just his defensive display, but I thought he was a real threat going forward as well. He was always providing that option for us. And I felt I was sitting there at half-time thinking, he's been one of our most threatening players going forward. So massive credit to Destiny Udogie. Great to see him getting back to full fitness, his ability to play 90 minutes, because we've seen in the first 4 games of the season he's gone off in the second half, and quite rightly so, because he's been clearly tiring in games. He got that 45 minutes against Coventry in midweek, which was a pre-planned sub from Ange Postecoglou to take him up at half-time. And you can see he's reaping the benefits, because he's definitely getting back to full fitness now and showing his best performance of the season by some way against Brentford. So lovely to see. And we need to see it, and I'm sure we will, to see him put in performances in like that consistently, which we saw in the first half of last season, to be one of the best left backs in the Premier League. So I'm definitely certain he can get there. Next up, we're going to be talking about creative Sonny.
Yeah, and Son yesterday definitely at his creative best with the chances he was creating, playing in the more transitional way was giving him a lot more space to play in and a lot more options to find, I felt, in the penalty box. And I thought he made the most use out of it, as despite the fact that he didn't have too many shots on there. I think only 1 shot on target. He created 7 chances, which is more than the whole of the Brentford side, which goes to show how creative he was and how good he was at creating chances yesterday. Obviously got 2 assists as well on the day, and I thought he put in a really top display yesterday, and he was a massive threat for Brentford, which they struggled to handle. And I think, again, similar to Brennan, really benefited from the more transitional nature of the game, and he just was a chance creating machine.
Captain's performance for our Sonny, and I loved again him getting in the positions where he's going to be the biggest threat on the football pitch. And he did that again yesterday. 2 assists, 7 key passes, 2 big chances created. And yeah, the only thing that was missing was him getting on the score sheet yesterday, really, or him providing a real threat in front of goal. I think everything else he did to a really high standard yesterday. So big up to our Son Heung-min. And last but not least, a good week for Brennan Johnson.
Yeah, and after the tough time he's had, post the North London derby, got the winner against Coventry, and then put us in the lead yesterday, which in another display, which I really felt he was becoming more confident, more effective. You saw how he just shifted and shot for the goal that he scored, and he took 6 shots yesterday, which I think is probably more than he's had in any other game for Tottenham.
Probably all season.
Probably all season. And just getting those positions to make a difference and to be clinical was really, really good to see. And you saw that finish that he had. He does have that ability to find the corner if you give him that space, and if he's confident enough to take his man on, just find the yard and put the strike across the face of goal. And it capped off what has been a positive week, and hopefully he can really build on this.
Yeah, and I think with Brennan, with the week that he has had, last minute goal against Coventry and a really good performance and goal against Brentford yesterday, it's just exactly what he needed. And nobody likes to see what he had to go through after the Arsenal game, and having to deactivate his social media. It was clearly getting to him. You could see that on the pitch at Coventry. And whether you criticise his performances or not, nobody likes to see what he had to go through. It was completely uncalled for, completely over the top, and no footballer should have to go through that just because of a few poor performances. So with that being said, it shows a really good mentality to respond in the way he's responded. Look, it has got to him, so you can't say he hasn't let it get to him. But in terms of the way he's responded, getting on the score sheet 2 games in a row, and then following up, because I didn't think he was that good against Coventry, but it was the fact that he got on the score sheet, winning us the game, putting us into the next round after a poor performance all round from the team, and then to follow that up, including with the tactical tweaks that Ange did make, to put in a really good display against Brentford. So hopefully we can put all that behind us now, and he can kickstart his season now. So those are our 5 takeaways from the game against Brentford.